totally 100% agree with you. I understand that there is a problem right now. People are getting hurt, and we don't have a solution for that. It seems like right now our government and like these social media companies are just kind of pandering.
Yeah, and the government definitely don't have a fucking clue what to do about it, because today you have the Mayor of London talking about robots policing
Yeah.
the internet. Like,
Jeez, what an embarrassment that was.
yeah,
Yeah.
it just seems that does seem farcical in a way where I'm like, yeah, I can see why maybe they would implement something like that, or they would maybe legislate that something like that has to happen, but
Hmm.
that doesn't seem like the answer to it at all. Like, so to move on, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, the Euros finished this week,
Hmm.
and as you know, smug Scotsman football supporter, England lost, which was fantastic because we would never have heard the end of it. To be quite honest, they're still talking about 1966 when they won the World Cup.
Yeah.
55 years ago, they bring it up every
Yeah.
tournament. They talk about, there was like the Scotland game. England played Scotland this year, and they spoke about a goal that Paul Gascoigne scored in 1996. They spoke about it every 5 minutes, and it's like these people need to get over the past.
Yeah.
Uh,
We're living in the past, man, for
yeah,
fuck's
so
sake.
I can't stand watching the Euros for the rest of my life every 4 years and them talking about how England won it in 2021. I just can't do it. Don't want to do that, Liz.
I understand that. I hadn't thought about that.
So England lost, which was great. However, they managed to get all the way to the final, so it was looking bad for us for a while. But they played Italy in the final, and basically, to try and explain it. Well, you watched the game actually, so the game finished in
Yeah.
a draw, and that meant they went to a penalty shootout. Now, at this point, there was like an aftermath to the game, which is spurred on like this sort of racial abuse storyline. So,
Yes.
and during the penalty shootout, I realised this earlier. It was almost like the racial stars like aligned, because 5 England players took penalties. 2 of them were white, and
Oh,
3 of them
yep.
were black. And the
And
2 white
who
players
missed their
scored,
shots?
and the 3 black players didn't score, which is a total coincidence, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's like an absolute coincidence. Um,
But
but in the aftermath, so England lose the World Cup, not the World Cup, the Euros, sorry. And in the aftermath, it's been a huge story in the media that these black players have received a ton of racial abuse online. Now,
yeah.
I've not seen any of it because I don't follow those circles online. I watched football, but I don't like follow footballers, their Twitter accounts, because they're footballers. They kick a football at the end of the day.
Yeah. What the fuck you want to do about
I have no interest in following like their opinions or whatever. So I've not seen it, but I've been working from home obviously, and I've seen a lot of like daytime television that's been kind of speaking about it. And
it?
there was like a mural in Manchester that was like totally defaced of like one of these players. But there's been like a massive like outcry of support as well. So when it was like defaced, people seen that it was defaced. It became a big story of this abuse they were receiving online, and a bunch of people went to the mural and they like fixed it up, and they put like a bunch of like post-it notes over it, like support messages, which I thought was really, really
Yeah.
nice.
Cool. Yeah.
So it's probably important to highlight that the racial abuse that they're receiving online is from a minority of people. They're like, the England team were still like taking the knee at the beginning of football games, like against racism, to show support. And there was like a minority of fans that were like booing it and stuff like that. So, for whatever reason. But there's this minority of football supporters in England that are clearly still have this like racism within them. Now, I don't have any doubt that if these players had scored their penalties, there would have been like nothing said about it. They would have like celebrated just as much. And it was, a part of it was probably just like an outcry of people who were like angry at the fact England lost. It was like,
Really, yeah, upset
yeah,
people
like they
lashing
just
out.
tried to say the worst thing they could think of. But there's also obviously a bunch of people that are in fact racist, that
Sure.
are saying these things. There must be a combination of the two people. Um, so there's been a huge like story in the media, like I say. The news are covering it all the time. The daytime television programs are talking about it all the time. And I even seen the mayor of London on a talk show today speaking about it. And they were like asking him how he thinks that maybe social media companies can kind of combat this and what they should be doing. And he kind of gave this like PR response where it was like quite clear that he didn't really know what he was talking about, and immediately he started talking about algorithms that could like shut down people as they were like
Oh,
saying this, and I was
fuck.
and I was kind of like listening to it, and I was like, I can understand how you would immediately say something like that. Like
That's like a knee jerk
it,
one,
it,
right?
it seems like something that you can say with like no education whatsoever. But when I think about like algorithms online, like computers trying to combat this, I think about, before you know it, the word banana is just like removed because it has like racial connotations. Like if you say it in the
Sure.
wrong context, it can be extremely racist.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But you can just say the word banana in general and it'll be like removed. Or you could see like a sarcastic comment, for example, like say you quote tweeted like a racist news article and you said something along the lines of, yeah, because of course all black people commit crimes,
And
scrubbed.
then
You know,
yeah,
the
sure.
algorithm
Hmm.
just like takes it away. So it kind of seems like he was coming across like he was just like saying something just in order to like appease the question that he was getting, just to show that he was against it. Um,
Yeah.
so before we even start like thinking about how social media can tackle like racial abuse, because that seems like it's like quite far down the line in this conversation, what should we be doing about racial abuse in general? Because racial abuse is like a form of like harassment, right? It's like it is like abuse. Like you can do this to a person and just like sort of like domestic abuse or like verbal abuse, like say for example a toxic relationship with a couple where like the man abuses the woman like verbally and it sort of like mentally like
Hmm.
gets to
Hmm.
her and it starts to like it starts to like emotionally drain her. That can happen this way as well. Now it's not violence, but it can be, I would say it could be equally damaging to a person to have this like abuse rained upon them. It's not like physical hurt, but it could be causing like mental hurt to someone. So what should we even be like doing about it in the first place? Because I think something has to be done against it, but the answer is not like immediately clear in any way.
I don't know if something should be done about it. To be honest with you, like I, I when it comes to like racism, I I speak from a perspective of someone that is white, so I've not received traditional racism the way that we're talking about it. So
Right.
oftentimes it's hard to comment on these things. But I kind of feel these days that like you're talking about like how it's harassment and like sure it's harassment, but how is it any different from like other bad word harassment? Are you trying to tell me that the word like the N word is so shocking and so hurtful and causes so much trauma to people that they're going to like that warrants more of a response as someone else being generically hateful online?
So when I hear that, like when I hear that word, it definitely like spurs a reaction in me that isn't like offended because it doesn't the word doesn't like mean anything for me as like a white person. But I'm definitely like if someone's like openly using that word and like calling someone that, like if someone's actively aiming that word at like a black person, I'm like, yeah, I should probably avoid that person. Like
Sure,
it spurs
definitely.
like a reaction within me. So I'm not even saying should we make it illegal to say these words. I'm not saying we should like ban the words from the face of the earth or anything like that. Like I'm thinking there might be like other ways that we can do things about it. Because one of the things that I notice when it comes to like cases of like racial abuse, and I can even throw it back to the episode that we spoke about when I brought to the table the Black Lives Matter movement
Football
and
one, yeah.
how there was a Rangers player that was racially abused on the pitch.
Presumably.
It seems like these a lot of these acts of like racist abuse and when people are trying to be like homophobic and transphobic, a lot of this is done hidden, you know? Like when I throw back to the Rangers player, the guy went over to him and he like covered his mouth so that nobody could like see what he was saying, sort of
Yeah,
thing.
that's because he knew he'd lose his job if it was caught, right?
Exactly. So he hid it. And like there's people like these people online that are creating all these like social media accounts. They're like doing so behind these like anonymous like banners. They're just creating an
Yeah,
account,
like
making up an email
throwaway
address,
emails.
and they're just like spewing it out. Like these people, the vast majority of it surely isn't people like walking up to people on the street and like spewing racism towards them. I mean, there must be a small like section of that.
Small, uh-huh.
There must be like racism that exists like in the faces of people that happens like in real life.
Yeah, uh-huh.
But
Mm-hmm,
when
mm-hmm.
you think about these like cases like the one in the Euros, they're talking about how it's all happening online. So it's all happening behind the anonymity of a profile. So is there something we can be doing to like expose that? And all of a sudden, if you could like link that to a person, are they like not going to do it, sort of thing? So like if your online profile, like if I'm like my profile says like Scott Payton, you know, and I
Mm-hmm.
go online and I type this racial abuse, like you can see that I've said that, like
Yeah.
it's me that said it, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
would that deter people from like saying stuff like this and just going out and spewing this like vitriol into what they think is like an endless echo chamber, but is actually
Yeah.
someone's account?
Eroding people's privacy online would undoubtedly make people more scared of like saying things that they know are going to piss other people off. It's because, you know, these people that are making accounts, they're doing this because they want a reaction and they get it every single time. You know, like they know exactly what to do. They need to type 5 letters in a row and then they're going to get fucking reaction to high heat. Sure, if you make everyone's IP address available and make everyone's background trackable and stuff like that, people aren't, well, people with half a brain aren't going to do it anymore. I think, though, that privacy online is one of those tenets that shouldn't be eroded any more than it already has been. You know, I feel that we're in a place right now where I worry that, you know, like, I don't know. It's one of those. It's one of those scenarios. It's like, you know, if you don't have anything to hide, you shouldn't need to worry. That, but I fucking hate that mantra. I hate how that thinks. I don't like the assertion of belief or not, or sorry, of whether someone's guilty or not. I don't know. I just think that getting rid of any type of confidentiality or something that is not the way we should be approaching this. I don't really think we should have any affirmative action on this whatsoever. Like, surely isn't the best way, as it's always been, to what are not as it's always been, but like the old fashioned solution was like, you know, ignore them. Is that not? Is that not like, see if the news, like as you said, like news medias have been all over this like flies on shit. They've been losing their fucking mind, and like, I even knew about this for myself. I don't even know how many tweets there were in the first place.
I have no
All I
idea.
know is that the social media went fucking mad. Not social media, but the mainstream media as well as like online websites went absolutely mad over it. And all they're doing is just giving so much attention to this issue. Like, I don't know, man. It seems unnecessary.
I understand what you're saying when you're talking about the privacy that we have online, and you know we've kind of touched on this before, where I would agree that if you're to do something in the privacy of your own home on your computer, I don't think there should be like Big Brother shouldn't be watching you sort of thing. There are like elements that should be private, and the things that you do personally are up to you. What I'm thinking about this new wave of like social media is that once you log on to social media and you say something, or if you tweet at an account, you're no longer that's no longer private. You know,
Mm,
that's now no longer your private life. Like, you've clicked on someone's account, you've said something to them, and you've only done it because you're behind like anonymity. Like, I think we have to be looking at, you know, we just spoke in the previous topic about trying to be a bit more aware about like relationships and how social media is kind of, and YouTube is kind of warping that.
mm-hmm.
You know, how many of these people look at this social media and don't think they're doing anything? Like, they would never walk up to someone in real life and like say these words. They would never walk up to someone and like give them abuse for something like that in real life, but they're doing so on a platform where they feel like maybe they feel like it's never going to be heard, or maybe they feel like it'll get a reaction. There's like something different about it. Like, I think we have to like stop looking at social media like it's so different from like regular conversation, you know, because I feel like once you go on, if you're to go online and you're to post something, or you're to go online and like say something to someone, like, you're no longer privately saying that anymore. You know, that's no longer something that you're doing in your own privacy. That's something you're invading someone else's privacy to get there. But like, you're on a social platform, so like everyone's kind of logged onto this, and you've sort of like half agreed. There's like an
Yeah,
unwritten agreement that you're now in a social space, but you're also wanting to like hide your name. Like, those are kind
yeah.
of conflicting messages, right? And we people don't see the damage they can be doing.
Sure. Yeah, I guess it's kind of like a have your cake and eat it scenario. You want people want to be able to act antisocially in a social space. That's what we're talking about here, and you're saying that that should be treated to this like the same standards as if you were talking to someone face to face,
So
right?
like, someone goes onto Twitter, like, you know, average Joe, Joe Bloggs was on Twitter, and he's angry that Marcus Rashford has missed a penalty. He clicks onto Marcus Rashford's profile because he
Mm-hmm.
knows that's who that is. His name is on social media, and he can say something to him, but
Mm-hmm.
he can do so without giving his name. It's like he's opted into a I'm going to speak to you because I know who you are, but I'm going to do it whilst you don't know who I am, sort of thing. That's hypocritical, right? That's like backwards for you to go onto
I
this,
don't know
seek
if
a
that
person
is.
out, like go into their circle, and like that is like kind of parasocial in a way where it's like one directional, terrible influence to someone, but then
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing that can come back that way. Like that's like a really
Yeah,
negative like relationship, right?
I guess so. But I guess what we're kind of like, what my point was just with it, part one of this episode was that like conversations on social media, these spaces are not equivalent to real conversations. Like the impact isn't the same, the messages aren't the same. I don't. I get where you're coming from in terms of like the hypocrisy of it, but I don't necessarily think we should be attributing truths that we expect in normal conversation to that type of space. So for instance, like, is there something inherently wrong with people being able to have anonymity in social spaces? Is that wrong? I can't tell you right now that I think that's necessarily
I'm
wrong.
I'm starting to think that it is. That's where I'm coming from at this point. I'm now starting to think that like the more and more that I use these websites, the more shit you see on them. You know, you see like Facebook's maybe not as bad. Like Facebook's the one where it's like actually it's kind of okay to see it on Facebook because you can attribute to who's posting it. Like if you're somebody you know is posting racist stuff on Facebook, you can be like, oh okay, delete. Like I know who this person is, don't want to see it, don't want to interact with them, sort of thing. Whereas when you go into like Twitter and people are just posting stuff on the wall, it's like you have no idea like who it is. There's no sort of accountability. There's no responsibility for what you say. So you can just like say whatever you want, but it can cause the same sort of damage.
But there's no accountability in real life for what you say. If you have a conversation with someone, it's not being recorded the whole time. It's that conversation you had with a random person isn't going to be brought back to you in 10 years from now. And I'm not saying that that means that you should go around saying this, and that. It's because real life does have consequences. For instance, if you did go around saying the racist things, you'd get fucking knocked out. There are like equivalent consequences. I just don't see how these are equivalent. And also that's another thing. Like I exclusively use social media that's anonymous. Like I don't like see Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, in which you've got a name. I don't do that. I have a username. It's because I don't want me, Lewis Mitchell, to be online. I want me talking to you to be completely separate to who I am online because I am aware that they're not the same person. I I'm like aware of that distinction. And I genuinely believe that people, when they're online, will act more naturally in an online space when there's anonymity. It's because that's why I think social media is so fucking fake. Because it's a bunch of people just saying it for to virtue themselves effectively, just like saying what they think the people around them want to hear. There has to be something to that as well.
Yeah, and the relationships in real life, though, when you say stuff like that, like you get like reactions from that. Like we spoke about in the last topic, when you're speaking to someone in real life, you're getting like the reactions. You're putting something out. You're seeing the reactions like around
Yeah.
you, and
Mm-hmm.
you're learning like how to act. You're learning how to like socially interact. Whereas when you go into social media, you say this thing. There's like no negative backlash for you whatsoever. So there's like nothing to stop you from like abusing someone. Whereas if you do that in like
Mm-hmm.
a real
Mm-hmm.
life
Mm-hmm.
setting where like if you were to abuse someone, like there would be people around you that would be like, like I said earlier, I would like actively avoid that person. I would like, maybe I don't want to be friends with this person anymore. So there's a reason that you get that reaction from people because what you're doing is inherently bad. You're going onto social media, you're doing something that I perceive as to be inherently bad, you know, and there's no way for me to like associate with that. There's nothing for you as a person to see a reaction. It's kind of like these we're talking about kids in these parasocial relationships. There's no way for you to like see a reaction. You're spewing something that's just like horrible into the world, and then you can just keep on doing it. So it, I'm
Right.
worried about the effects that it has on people. The psychological effects
I
that
get
it can
you.
have on people.
I have absolutely no proof of this whatsoever, but I can't help but feel that people should stop treating insults online as offensive as insults in real life. I think that's kind of, I don't know. It's hard to say, and this is kind of a subjective thing. I know that. I truly understand that. But like, there is something very different from someone going up to your face and calling you a wanker as opposed to being told a wanker online. Those are not comparable situations, you know? Like, I feel that, like, quote unquote inappropriate humor, or not inappropriate humor, sorry, inappropriate behavior online is more normalized, you know? So, like, trying to treat someone being racist in an online space to the same severity that you have with people outside of online spaces, like face to face, seems unnecessary to me. You know, it seems almost farcical. It's because this is what I'm just saying. These are categorically just different things, and I get it.
What?
I get how you're saying.
Why are they different though?
Well, because you'd say things online that you fundamentally wouldn't say to someone's face. You know, like
Yeah.
people
Why?
are much
Why?
more
But why
confrontational
would you do?
online.
Why would you do that?
Well, I don't do it. I don't take part in these places, but it's because of the fact that someone's not in front of you. You know, you can talk to someone you know and say things to them that you wouldn't say if they were right in front of you. Because when they're right in front of you, you have, like, you know, concepts of like physicality coming into it, and like
Mm.
it's more real. You know, this conversation, because it is real. Because you're talking to someone's face, you're reading their body language, you're interpreting their gestures. When it's online, it's just not. It's watered down. It's not a real interaction. So it's I don't know. I don't think it's
So
I can't compare them that
I
way.
would say that the reason, you know, if someone was to be racist in front of me, the reason that I would disassociate myself with that kind of person, especially if we're in like a group situation or like a circle, I would try and like get myself away from that person, is because I see that behavior as bad behavior. Like
Just a red flag,
for
right?
in societal terms, I see that behavior
Sure,
as inherently bad. So I'm going to
sure.
try and disassociate myself with that person, and I would hope that that would have some sort of influence on them, where they would like think about that. Um,
Probably not.
I would hope that they would see that they're losing friends around them. You know, and maybe in some way, shape, or form, they'd be like, "I'm being like this, and I'm starting to like lose people, or something negative would be happening that would try and change them." I would hope that would happen. But when you go and do it online, you know, you put that out, and there's almost like no correction. You know, it seems like I'm thinking about it in the same vein as these parasocial relationships, where your social interactions are supposed to kind of benefit you. They're supposed to make you grow. Whereas you go online and you do something like this, there seems to be no benefit for you to be able to go and spew something online like racist hate under the banner of anonymity. Like, what does that do for you? I don't know, understand, like that doesn't benefit you as a person in any way, right?
I don't think you should look at the basis of all conversations as how it can benefit you. Because I don't think it does work like that. I think it's, you know, I don't quite follow where you're going with that one there. Like,
What so my point is, I guess, if someone's to go online, make an anonymous account and say something so like racially abused like Marcus Rashford,
yes,
is there any good that comes out of that situation?
no,
Then why should it be allowed to happen?
because it doesn't matter.
But
Like, I don't see, like,
this guy's
the good
been
that you're saying.
this
Like,
guy's been racially abused online, though. That's obviously
I
it's
think,
affecting him.
well, I don't think that's obvious, but I see where you're coming from. I obviously understand how. It seems to me that I am understanding everything you're saying here. I understand the responses you're saying, and I understand the difference, the hypocrisy of the actions. I just feel that people should understand that these are words that are being sent. That's not person talking to you. That's different. You know, this is someone that has easily made an account. You know, in 3.5 minutes of throwing it together to send you a message to try and get a raise out of you. If we ignore that, then that's how I just I don't see how that's any different from the all interactions online in which we have a scenario in which someone could possibly be hurt through bad language. You know, are we going to like, you know, this is obviously taken it to like the nth degree, but like, we're going to stop like criticizing people's works now because it can potentially hurt them? It's like, no, definitely not. And there's something to be said that if you were to like talk to someone online and like criticize their work, you'd fucking go through them. If you're talking to them face to face, you would not. These conversations would just go down a completely different way. I don't. I feel that there's a severity of online versus talking in person that sometimes is conflated, and I get it. I agree with everything you're saying, man. But I just don't know if it needs to be done. That's not the important thing in the world right now, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, I do understand what you're saying when you say that. And I do wonder how many tweets like they've received. I wonder how like big this issue was because like I say, I've only heard
Well,
about it on like
you're,
social media.
yeah. I mean, see, to be honest with you, you're right. See, if I found out that it's like hundreds of thousands of tweets, actually, I would be saying to myself, there's something wrong here, or there's something wrong in the fucking English populace that's making them so toxic to act like that, or something. I don't know, and I may be underplaying this, and actually might be much more of an issue than it is. I have to say though that there there has been a huge amount of media coverage on this, a staggering amount. I don't watch football, but I know about this, and I found it on Reddit, which isn't even like UK based. Obviously, it's the fucking Euros, so it was likely to be on Reddit. So, like, from my perspective, we're already going about raising awareness on this issue. You know, we're already letting people know that this is bad behavior, and everyone that's doing this knows that it's bad behavior. So, the only thing, you can implement is like fucking algorithms like Boris was going on about. And I think that that's YouTube has proven that algorithms are not accurate enough when it comes to, millions upon millions of posts and stuff.
Yeah, I think like you've always said this, but you've always thought that like words are just words and like you've never like been affected by them. That's always what you preach. I don't think that's how it works for everyone though. I don't think people are able to like remove themselves from that as easily as maybe you find it. I think especially for like I think for like minorities, there's something different associated with like that sort of abuse. And I think like racism and homophobia and transphobia, I think there's something about the words that we'll never understand because
No,
we're
no,
not
yeah,
in those
sure.
communities. I think that's why it's like different. So I'm trying to like, while I'm looking at it as well, and I'm like, well, it could just be ignored. I'm attempting in some way to put myself in their shoes and be like, maybe it's not just words to them though. Maybe it's like something else. But
But
it
mm,
seems like social media is like trying to do something about it though. It seems like the outcry is for that to happen, politically, and social media companies seem to be sort of veering in the direction of doing something about it. What do you think anything is going to happen from this? I mean, I don't think algorithms probably isn't an option, I don't think.
I think they probably will go down that route. I think that's the way it's been going for a little while now. Is that these companies are going to try and make more and more sophisticated algorithms that will
I
automatically
should be
flag
clear. I
content.
should be clear that I meant the algorithms weren't the answer, but
Oh,
but
sure.
they might be done. You're right.
Yeah, yeah. It's probably the implementation here. Um, yeah, in terms of what I don't think I think that's probably destined to fail. As I said, we've seen examples with YouTube, and we end up in these scenarios, like you said, exactly. Like, you can't use, like, fucking World War II channels can't use the word Nazi in their name because that'll get flagged and demonetized and taken off the web and stuff like that, which is like a huge, yeah, a potential drawback. I don't really know, man. Like, it feels that the world is, it genuinely feels to me as if the world is becoming less racist, which is funny. It's because, like, that's what I experience in my life. That's what I experience in the people around me. If you were to watch the news, you would believe that the world is like hit an all-time high of racism in the last couple of years, and
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what the truth is there. I really don't know. Are we getting worse? Are we getting better? I feel we should be getting worse. It's because we've been pushing education programs for like 10 years now, but maybe we're just like, I don't know. Maybe it's getting worse before it gets better.
I I would agree with that as well. I think that if I look around me, it seems like the younger generations are pushing out the older generations in terms of like racism, homophobia,
Mm-hmm.
transphobia, all these things. The younger generations do seem more accepting, but you're right. It does seem like it's getting, if you were to look at traditional news media, I would say it does seem like it's getting worse.
Mm.
But maybe it's only because more attention is being drawn to it now. Maybe it's
Right.
becoming an issue, so more attention is being drawn to it as a whole, as these big profile football players get involved. They've got thousands of followers on Twitter. They're like spreading it out. People see this, the news media
Mm.
captures it, it like grows. Whereas like 10 years ago, a racist
People
outburst like
didn't care
that,
that much.
people
Yeah.
it wouldn't have picked up any traction. I would agree that it is getting a bit better, although I still see the problems. So the people that are racist are like still here.
Sure. Definitely.
They're a
Yeah.
bit older
Mhm.
now, but like they're still here. I don't know. I feel like that the reason people are willing to like spew this like hate and they're willing to say things that they wouldn't say in real life on social media is like their lack of repercussion. Like that seems like
Yeah. Yeah.
that seems like the big driving force for being able, for going on making an account like this, because you can say whatever you want, and
Yeah.
nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to lose your job. You're not going to
Yeah.
get any punishment. You're not going to lose any friends. You're not going to make any enemies. You're just going to see it. You can look at the account afterwards and go on the rest of your day. But there's a reason. I think there's a reason that we can't do that in like real life, and it's because society will push back against that. And it's almost like, from my perspective, that social media has kind of broken down that barrier where it's like you can do things now that no longer have the repercussions that they should have.
Mm.
So I'm looking at things like Twitter, where people have these handles, and because you can't see can't see who it is or what, or put like a name to the statement that they're putting out. So they're saying whatever they want, even though that's something that they shouldn't be able to do in like real life because society like pushbacks against it.
Yeah. Yeah. I get you.
I personally think that maybe the answer to something like this would be to maybe associate like, so you've got your email address on Twitter and you've got like your username or whatever, but like people, you can't really associate those with like people. Maybe to associate something like a phone number with it, and then that doesn't necessarily say who's online, but in order to get a phone number, you have to go through you have to get like a contract or like a SIM card or something like that. You have to go through a bit of effort to like put your phone number onto an account on Twitter. And if your account then gets banned and you don't have that phone number anymore, you'd have to go get a new phone number to make a new account.
Yeah. Yeah. I get you.
So something like that something along the lines of putting hoops or obstacles that you have to go over in order to make a new account, that might be ideal. And like maybe,
Yeah.
I guess like your main account can be like anonymous, but then you can't have like a personal Twitter account sort of thing. I
Yeah.
think that might combat it in some way, shape, or form.
That'll be like the putting in 20% effort to get 80% benefit. You're right. I think that'd be a quite easy dirty fix that would probably see a massive reduction. See, just putting small, for instance, you can't post any content within 3 days of making a new account. That would be something
Sure.
that would be just like really simple stages that would probably make a massive difference to the overall effect that this has. Going back to that previous point though, it's I think I couldn't agree with you more. I've always felt this was that anonymity breeds toxicity. It's because that's why people associate gaming to this day with like toxic gamers. It's because you're playing in an environment where you're not talking to people face to face, you don't know their name, you don't know where they're from, and you can just scream down the mic to them. Like, I don't know about you, but when I was like a young Xbox 360 gamer, I fucking just screaming vitriol down the mic, type of thing. And it was just due to the anonymity. I don't know if that anonymity correlates to you then acting like an asshole in real life. Part of me feels that people should be able to differentiate between these two. Like, I think that's the key. The key thing that I'm thinking of this is that how do we draw differentiators between how you act online and how you act in real life? Should we be considering these with the same weight and impetus? Because there's something to be said there. People they just interact completely differently in these two environments, and I can see how aspects of that can lead to like hypocrisy, but also think that that's not necessarily a bad thing, and it could just be an evolution of human communication, outside of talking.
I definitely fall on the side of it as, if we don't act like that in real life, there must be a reason that we don't act like that. Like there's a reason that society will ostracize these sort of things. Like if you go and do that and you get like a negative reaction from like your peers or from the circles that you exist in, there's a reason that you're getting that negative reaction. And to then go online and then you go to a place where you're not getting that negative reaction, I'm worried about the repercussions that will have. Because we're talking about, so if you were to be in like a real life circle and you were to like abuse someone in the circle, like that person would be like mentally damaged from it, let's say, for example.
Sure.
And we can see how that would be a bad thing for the group, because if the group is like 6 people large, 1/6 of the group is now stuck in their own head, mentally ill sort of thing, could potentially. Whereas you go online and you do that, and it's like there's not the same sort of repercussion. Like you can go on and you can do that, and maybe these people can't disassociate with the words online or the fact they're just getting a rise, and they see it as the statement that they're saying, and it does the same thing. So I'm worried about the breaking down of these barriers, but it causing the same sort of damage.
Yeah, that's a good point. I this might be like a distinction between adults and kids. I'm not entirely sure, but I feel most people that go online and spew vitriol, they are completely aware that doing that in real life would have much, much worse consequences. You know,
Yeah.
like that's why they do it online. It's because they have the opportunity. It's like a venting type of thing. You know, so this is where they get to let out some of that toxicity, and like it's yeah, it almost just seems like a
Like letting off some sort of steam or something like that.
possibly. You know, that's the thing. Like yeah, I just don't know if we should hold equivalent standards to how people communicate in different ways. It's because there is just a dynamic about being online that is different. And you're sorry, one last point as well. You are right that I want to re-emphasize that when it comes to, you know, hurting people's like feelings or like affecting their mental health, that type of thing, it is something that's subjective. You know, for my opinion, the idea of having a law to protect people's feelings is like farcical. But from someone that could have their mental health affected through words, it's like I understand it. It's something that you will never be able to keep everyone happy about, because there's always going to be people saying, you know, don't be ridiculous. But there's also people that are saying, look, we have proof that within certain scenarios, people can be equally damaged. So I find it difficult. Really, really interesting though. I've never thought about that in any type of depth like that before. And yeah, you've definitely made me aware of how there's a huge hypocrisy in the way that people act.
I agree when you talk about like there being a law against it being farcical, and like making laws against like saying words seems like a very dangerous precedent to set, because all of a sudden you know if you start outlawing words,
As soon as you police language, it's like
where do
the
you
end
go?
of
Like it's
yeah,
just
yeah,
you just start going off the deep end there, don't you?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, but I think that the reason that that doesn't have to be against the law is because there's like a societal correction that goes on within that.
Yeah,
Whereas like I think there's like a sort of feedback loop. That I guess that's kind of what like social societies are, right? They're like you putting stuff out, getting feedback on that, like changing up what you're doing, putting out other stuff. And like if you are putting out like racist opinions and like you're surrounded by people that like kind of agree with them, like you're never going to like stop them. Whereas I guess as a society, I kind of want us to be driving towards like stopping these things, which to be clear, I think we actually are. I think that
yeah. But
the
that's the
I
thing.
think that the younger generations are driving towards that, and that actually is where we're going. I agree with you though that it does seem like media is now posting it like the biggest issue in the world, and it's like, do you guys know that 50 years ago humans owned humans?
Yeah,
And
right,
it's like
right.
you're saying
In
that
some parts of the world,
you're
they still do.
yeah, you're saying that like racism now is like worse than it ever was, when it's like slavery's been outlawed in these like massive first world countries. You know, it's like you can't really equate that when people are saying, "Oh, the abuse they're receiving online, it's the worst it's ever been," and it's like they used to be owned. You know, it was
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah. Have a bit of awareness about what you're talking about.
like look back like 100 years and you'll see how far we've come. And if you look forward 100 years, I bet you'll see us even like go even further forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. As I said, I can only hope so. I feel in my gut that we're heading there. I really do. And it's hard for us to comment on it because we're not on the offending end of like the traditional UK racism. You know, I believe that we're getting better though, and conversations like this, they are exactly how we're going to get there. You know, like I had never before thought about how specific languages used online are equivalent in some ways for certain people talking about online. And as long as we live in that society where people are still being really hurt by concentrated efforts of the racists online, we're living in a country that has a racism problem, you know. And until that's gone, we need to be thinking about how to address it.
Yeah, and the things that we've outlined though as well, we're talking about making it harder to make accounts or stopping them from tweeting for like 3 days, and
Mm-hmm.
even more extreme when I'm talking about like putting someone's name to tweets, like knowing who said that sort of thing. I don't think social media companies have any incentive to do any of these things, because you think about it, at the end of the day, they're stopping new accounts, they're
Yeah.
stopping clicks, they're stopping numbers for like advertising and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. Like they can be like, "Oh, we had 100,000 new users today," and it's like, "Well, how many of them were just trolls?" It's like we don't
Yeah.
give a shit, like sort of thing,
No,
you know?
exactly. We fucking love the trolls. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I see in like a purely cynical way, you would think that these websites would like racist accounts, just because the racist accounts are going to be getting the ones that have massive site participation, and like sites externally will start linking into it. Like
yeah.
It's one of the best ways for these places to grow. So you're right, I hadn't thought about that either. They probably, Facebook probably don't see it as a racism problem. They see it as the racism money stream, you know?
Yeah, I mean, how many people went to Twitter to look for racist tweets after it was on the news? You know what I mean? It was like this
Yeah, yeah,
massive
yeah,
like
yeah.
clickbait fiasco where how many articles online linked to Marcus Rashford's Twitter and they're all over and they were all seeing the ads now and stuff like that. So I don't think they're necessarily they're not going to change. And I think, to be honest, going forward, I don't really interact with social media anyway. And on Twitter, I follow a few accounts, like not. I think I follow something like 70 people or something like that on Twitter. It's like a really small like
Hmm.
echo chamber, and I get some of my news that way. But it's not like I don't participate in the like in any of this stuff. You know, I
Yeah,
wasn't even aware this hate happened, sort of thing. I think going forward, I'm just going to try and avoid these websites where you just create like a sort of profile and you can go and just like say whatever you want, because I'm starting to feel like these social media sites are just damaging. Like they're just bad. Like they're breaking down barriers that exist for like reasons, and I think I'm just gonna like try and sort of pull myself back from it a little bit. And I would, if Marcus Rashford is like receiving all this like racial abuse on this website, a part of me is also like, why are you on this website? Like this website allows people to go on and do this to you. Like why, if you were to like come off of Twitter, you wouldn't be giving them those clicks. Like Twitter would be losing money because you wouldn't be there. There'd be
you'd be
no.
losing money though.
Well, maybe it would be, but so
You definitely
I
would
don't know
be.
if that's
Yeah.
like an oversimplification of the problem. Like that's me just saying like that's me being too naive about it. But there's a part of me that thinks that way as well, where it's like just stop using Twitter, just like get off of it.
Yeah. Apparently, in order to form, you know how you get like training for parasocial relationships, one of the ways that you do that is by making yourself available on as many platforms as possible. And, like this perception of you being immediately contactable type of thing. Like I think I have a funny feeling for most people, so, quitting Twitter and Facebook is not possible. They're not big enough because they will be getting a huge amount of fandom out of it. So it's almost like they're like tied to this website. I'm sure he probably after that experience would like to quit it. To be honest with you, and I can see how that would be something of a solution. I get it. I I am like yourself, and I'm in a similar position where I don't use social media all that much, but when I'm using it, I am aware that everything I'm reading is fake, and this is not real people that are writing these things. It's people sitting behind a computer. I think that that might be maybe trying to make people a little bit aware of that might not be a terrible thing as well. So that you're not talking to a person. If that person was in front of you, they wouldn't have said those things. They maybe would have thought it, which is a whole other conversation. But yeah, that's basically my takeaway. Is that I don't for one thing, I think we shouldn't be policing language. That's like, I think we both
I
agreed on
think we
that.
agree on
Put a
that.
line in
Yeah,
the sand. Yeah, we don't want to do that. I believe in a degree of sanctity of privacy online, and I believe there is subtleties between communication online versus communication face to face. But totally 100% agree with you. I understand that there is a problem right now. People are getting hurt, and we don't have a solution for that. It seems like right now our government and like these social media companies are just kind of pandering.
yeah, and the government definitely don't have a fucking clue what to do about it, because today you have the mayor of London talking about robots policing
Yeah.
the internet. Like
Jeez, what an embarrassment that was.
yeah,
Yeah.
it just seems that does seem farcical in a way where I'm like, yeah, I can see why maybe they would implement something like that, or they would maybe legislate that something like that has to happen, but
Hmm.
that doesn't seem like the answer to it at all. Like you're not like you're watching someone get shot and you're saying put on a bulletproof vest. You're not like taking the bullets out the gun sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's like an answer like down the line where it's like, let's try and deal with like the root of the problem here. Let's try and go
Mm-hmm.
as far to the root as we possibly can to deal with this problem, because
Yeah.
otherwise it's gonna like kill a weed at the root, otherwise it's gonna grow back. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You should not be getting angry at the platform for people's opinions. You should be getting angry at the people. It's not fucking it. For some reason, people think it's Facebook's job to regulate what people think and say. It's not. It's not their job.
Yeah, there's
It
something to
shouldn't
be
be
said for
their
that as
job.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, it does go deeper than that, and trying to like cancel people or silence them or whatever like that. It's not solving this problem. It's moving the problem. Um, but yeah. I think any delay you can is probably has to be something.
Okay,
Hmm.
stop recording.
Stop